All right, hey guys, Jeff Kurdakis here. I'm just going to jump right into this, address the elephant in the room that a lot of people have been talking about lately. If you haven't seen yet, one of the projects that used our smart lock technology called HatchDAO pulled liquidity off of Uniswap, effectively pulling an exit scam on the participants in there and holders in their token. So people were saying, how could HatchDAO, who interacted with the TrustSwap software, have been exit scammed? Doesn't that devalue TrustSwap? Doesn't that negate the value proposition? And the answer to that quite simply is no. What HatchDAO did is they used the Team Token Lock software. So what does Team Token Lock software do? Well, you can probably guess it locks Team tokens. What else does it do? You can also probably guess nothing. It locks Team tokens. Just like a lock on your front door just locks your front door. It's one attack vector that helps secure your home. Team token locks are one attack vector that helps secure your tokenomic ecosystem. So, of course, when they pulled liquidity, does that reflect poorly on TrustSwap at all in terms of what the software we provided is? Well, of course not. The locks still work. You know, if somebody goes and breaks through your window, you don't go and complain to the locksmith that they should have thought about protecting the window. And also people were saying, well, then you shouldn't have announced that, HatchDAO was using your software. Now, I see there's some validity to this, and I'll explain in a bit. But first to, play the TrustSwap side of things. If the locksmith installs a lock on a home, he's perfectly fine to say, hey, listen, guys, I just installed this lock on the home. This is like only the third lock I've ever installed. This is exciting. I'm gaining momentum in my business. I'm gaining traction. And that's positive news for everyone. And in the case of TrustSwap, it's positive to announce this thing because it shows that our software is gaining traction. Now, of course, if the window breaks and somebody breaks in, does it make sense to go to the locksmith and say, hey man, listen, you messed up. You totally messed up. You should have thought about the window as well. The locksmith would say, no, my job is this door. That's what I was hired for. That's what I was contracted for. And that's what I objectively announced that was being used. That what was the contractual agreement. So that said, I do believe there is a lot of massaging out that we need to do in terms of what announcements we put out. Something that I really talk about is that TrustSwap is open software. So just like Ethereum, just like MetaMask, just like Bitcoin, anybody can use it, anybody can interact with it. And that's an incredibly powerful thing. And so there's no prevention on who's going to do that. And it's just open software, and that's really beautiful, but it puts a lot of personal responsibility in people's hands because then people interacting with TrustSwap or people interacting with Ethereum need to be careful. You look at Uniswap, about 60% of the projects that launch on Uniswap are actually scams. Does that devalue Uniswap at all? Definitely not. Tons of ERC20s launch on Ethereum. Does that mean Ethereum is devalued? Definitely not. Things happen all over the place, and I would even argue that it's more intermingled with Ethereum and Uniswap than it is with TrustSwap, because all we've ever said is, hey, listen, we provide this very niche software, which is Team Token Locks. Obviously, we do a lot more, but in terms of like the security of a project, currently we just offer Team Token Locks and Investor Token Locks. So because somebody minted more liquidity, pulled the liquidity, that doesn't reflect on the what we have provided as a service. So anyways, that was a long-winded way of saying we understand that Ethereum, MetaMask, they don't announce when people or projects are using their services. That's a very valid point. And I think the conversation there is, this is a little more personal now, as we're launching a new company, and it's gaining traction, you just want to be excited. You want to announce, hey guys, we're gaining traction. We're as a community, this is exciting. We're propelling forward. So that's why those announcements happened. In the future, these announcements are going to be much more highly vetted because we assume that a lot of disclaimers pretty much everywhere would be sufficient. And not saying the word partnership, but rather integration would be sufficient for people to understand that, okay, just because they've used the software service, just because, this guy put this lock on this house, doesn't mean that it's a good investment or doesn't mean that it's a good house. This amazing locksmith put the lock on the house, therefore I need to buy this house. Guys, that's not quite how it works, and I think we're all very aware of that. So, but we are going to be much more diligent with our announcements. So, again, lots of different ways that these scams can happen. I've kind of posted about it. So people are asking, so should TrustSwap then, provide some kind of, like, I thought TrustSwap was supposed to be like, oh, we're going to provide security and make sure your investment is safe and doesn't get scammed and yada, yada, yada. That is absolutely impossible to do. And let me tell you why. So I'm going to look at the computer because I have a list. I don't want to miss anything here. Obviously, with the team token locks and investor token locks, which we both do, there's a no mint function so for example, a developer could just mint tokens and then more would be generated into the ecosystem. While we don't do audits, and so there's no way to prevent that. And even in an audit, let's say, oh, but this project got an audit. Well, if the mint function is meant to be in that code, the audit won't report on that mint function. It'll just say, yes, the contract is working as intended. Also, what audit firm do you whitelist? Because there are tons of audit firms. You can get internal audits done. So even an audit is an incredibly subjective thing. So for us to put a check mark and say, yes, a project was audited, that puts us at a huge liability because the code could still be compromised and vulnerable with a mint function. Also, some other things, the code could potentially not be immutable. It could be on Open Zeppelin framework where they could change the code and change the framework, or they could even swap the code entirely, or they could say, hey, listen, we have this token, we're going to issue a totally new one. There are so many ways to scam people in crypto. It is physically impossible to protect against all of them. This could even go to something just the team not performing, like we saw a lot in 2017. People are like, oh, these projects scammed. That's the words people use, these projects scammed. When in reality, the teams were really just underperforming. So we do not want to put ourselves in a position where, let's say everything is super solid. Okay, all the software is locked in. There's no way that there's going to be any funny business on the software. But then the team doesn't perform and the token price goes down. Guess what we're going to hear? We're going to hear, oh, TrustSwap, you're promoting scams. So that is just not a position we want to put ourselves in. The position we want to put ourselves in is being a DeFi ecosystem that offers an entire suite of software services, and multiple of these software services service multi-billion-dollar industries. We're talking crypto subscriptions, we're talking escrow, we're talking the launchpad, we're talking wrapping as a service, we're talking token locks, we're talking peer-to-peer swaps, we're talking exchange integrations, we're talking decentralized exchange. There's a ton. We do a ton. And one of the things that I don't think is strategically advisable for us to go deeper into is being an authority on what is safe to do, because there are way too many vulnerabilities on the investor side, on the legal side, and just on the sentiment side. Look, HatchDAO is a perfect example of this, guys. It's so blatantly obvious. When this happened, honestly, I saw the post, HatchDAO exit scammed. In my mind, I honestly thought, that's really unfortunate, but I mean, things happen. And it blows my mind. But then everyone jumped on TrustSwap and said, oh, you guys launched on TrustSwap. And there's so much misinformation out there because all they did was use that small piece of our software. They just installed the lock on their door. And then, a tornado came and blew down their house. There's no way to prevent against that. That's not something we do. So I think that's pretty good for a summary on what happened. Just to kind of wrap things up, a lot of people are saying, yeah, so you should probably alter your messaging, your announcements. As I mentioned before, I agree. We are going to be doing that. We're going to be a lot more consistent and diligent with that, making our statements with more disclaimers, more factual, because we don't want people, it's clear that a lot of people just see, TrustSwap in this, and they FOMO into that. And so we don't want that. So we're going to be a lot more diligent with what integrations we're announcing and how we're moving forward in that regard. And the way we're going to restructure our website a little bit so that it says a lot less on the, this is going to give you confidence that, We're going to remove those emotional words. We're just going to be very factual and say, hey, listen, here's what our software does. Here's how it can benefit you. For example, team token locks can still benefit teams to be able to send the tokens out over a period of time and know that those tokens are going to be vested, not have to go in manually. There's tons of benefits to team token locks. There's lots of parts to this ecosystem. I won't rabble on too much here. I want to keep this short. So I'm going to close off this part. I'm going to make a two-part video because I want this to be short and punchy so that people can just say, hey, it's a 10-minute video. I want to watch this, not watch a 30-minute thing. So I'll close this off and saying tentatively this Sunday at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to announce the dates and the details for the MobiPay TrustSwap Launchpad. And then we're also going to announce Launchpad project number 3 that is launching in October. This project has a team from Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, JP Morgan, Bank of England, Verizon, IBM, Google, and there's about 20 others on the list that are Fortune 500 companies. So Launchpad project number 3 is going to be an absolute monster. We also have another very cool announcement coming up on Tuesday in regards to the decentralized exchange. So stay tuned for that, guys. Anyways, I'm going to end this one. This is part 1, finishing up, and now we're going to segue into part 2, which is the AMA, and I'll link that in the description on the YouTube channel below.